Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about cosmetic product preservation technology. It's about both traditional and original ingredients. It's about how suppliers and brands are positioning preservatives today, and it's also about regional business development strategy. For today's CosmoFactory podcast episode, I am joined by Pascal Yvon, General Manager for the Americas region at Sharon Personal Care by eternis. Pascal, welcome to CosmoFactory.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you very much for having me with you today.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you're here. And for listeners who may not be familiar with Sharon Personal Care, I'll just say that the company makes active ingredients, emulsifiers, emollients, and Sharon has a long-standing reputation for preservative solutions. And since we have not had the chance yet to learn about product preservation tech here on Cosmo Factory, that is what I really want to talk with you about today. We know that preservative ingredients are included in product formulations to inhibit microbial growth, to maintain product integrity. This helps the product remain safe, pleasant to use. But Pascal, can you please tell us how traditional preservation ingredients work and expand a bit on why we use them?
Yeah, I think, again, as you reminded us, it's very important to have a preservation system in cosmetics products because it will guarantee the stability over time and the safety of the consumer. So it's very important to have that in the formulations. So traditional preservation systems usually share the common way of working, which is to be a membrane disruptor. And so they will completely inhibit, destroy, let's say, the external microbiological contaminants. Now, you have different groups into that also. You have, again, into the traditional, there are different periods when you can see different groups. So, for example, where, again, we will talk about that very likely, where you had initial compounds that, again, consumers are moving away from, like thiazolinones and formaldehyde. And you have new groups that appeared, like organic acids, alcohol, like phenoxyethanol, but also glycols, like ethyl glycols. When I'm talking about that, it's because it's very important. The first group, again, because it's a very important driver in the industry, were hydrophilic. And now this new group, this other group, it has a very strong lipophilic characteristic. And it's very important because the microorganisms, the microbial contaminants will go into the water phase. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very important characteristic. And again, we can talk about that, I'm sure, later on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's very helpful. And certainly we could choose any product format or category and look more closely at why preservatives are necessary and how they function. I do want to ask you about a very particular category, which is wet wipes. We know facial cleansing wipes are especially popular, I think because of their convenience. And many wipes are what I would call like a single step product, right? The cleanser or the lotion does not need to be rinsed off. With these types of products, as I understand it, the wipe itself, the material, as well as the cosmetic product formula, needs to be safe, needs some sort of preservative protection. Is there anything different or particular about preservation technologies for the wet wipe category?
Very good question. Because wet wipes are very different types of a different type of product that needs to have a specific way to be protected. Compared to traditional cosmetic products, wet wipes are heterogeneous. So you have two important components. You have, of course, the fabric, and you have the lotion. So you have to have specific solutions for that. Why? And because, again, you have the fabric that has a very high surface area, and so you need to take care of that because microbial contaminant can, take advantage of that. But also, what we are seeing in the wet wipes industry is a shift from plastic material, plastic fabric, into natural fabrics. And that is a big, big difference because for several reasons. The first one is that natural fabrics are usually polymer of glucose units. And microbial contaminants can hydrolyze those polymers. Then you end up with single glucose units. And these glucose units are actually food for microorganisms. So that's a significant difference with previous plastic fabric. The other thing is that with natural fabrics, you have a propensity to observe biofilm formation. And if you have a biofilm formation, that's a big problem for wet wipes. The fourth thing, again, and to come back a little bit to what we said about the hydrophilicity of for the protection and cosmetic products, is that what we call the crisscross affinity, which is that, again, we talked a little bit about the components that are more lipophilic characteristic, where the microorganisms are going to be more on the water phase. And it's particularly important in wet wipes because the water phase is very, very important, very big, up to 90%, 95%. So, and the natural fabrics are also on the more towards the water phase. So everything is going into the propensity to have more contamination. So you need to address those specific characteristic, and that's what we do at Sharon Personal Care to have an efficient protection. So you need to protect not only against the microbial contamination, but also the biofilm formation, for example. So it's very important that those, again, the wet wipes industry is a very specific type of product to protect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so helpful. And I love learning. So it's so nice to think about, of course, like you suggested, the materials are changing, right? What's in the material, and that's making a difference in what's needed for preservation, but also that idea of surface area. If we think about cosmetic products, many of them are very tiny, and then in contrast to a wet wipe, like it is like a very significant. I think that's wonderful to, for my imagination at least. Well, you've already mentioned that in recent years, some cosmetic preservatives in particular have come under scrutiny, right? We heard a lot about parabens were sort of a buzzword for a while on social media, consumer media, even content from some clean beauty brands. And that seems to have really shifted consumer demand and consumer expectations. We still see paraben free now as a common marketing claim. My question for you here is if demand for preservatives from your customers has changed in recent years because of sort of the skepticism or scrutiny they're getting from the end consumer.
Yes, completely. The consumers are more and more informed. I would say more and more educated. They have access to a lot of pieces of information. And also, again, as you mentioned, they are moving away from some components. You mentioned parabens, but we are seeing also more and more like moving away from phenoxyethanol and even some additional compounds. Even, we are hearing now moving away from sodium benzoate. So what's happening is that it puts the formulators into kind of a corner where there is no more simple solutions. There is no more one size fits all. And every pretty much formulation will require a specific solution. And so that's why it's very important to understand that. It's also very important for companies like Sharon to spend resources in research and development to provide innovative solutions to that shift in the marketplace. And we see this, you mentioned this, moving away from some components, this what we can call no list is expanding. I wouldn't say by the day, but pretty much so very fast. So you need to be very fast. You need to be reactive, and you need to provide solutions that will address those consumers' expectations.
Mhm. Are there any types of traditional preservative technologies that are still very much in demand from manufacturers, from brands?
Yeah, that's a very good point because even though the consumers' expectations are shifting, you still have some products that cosmetic products that are still dealing with, I would say, traditional preservation systems. So it's very important that for a company like Sharon to address that by having a portfolio that can cater to the different groups of consumers here.
Very good. And certainly new preservation technologies are coming to market, and there are many more in development. I'm hoping you can share with us some new technologies or approaches to product preservation. What's happening in this space?
It's very interesting, effectively, because that's one key aspect of resources that are spent by Sharon Personal Care for that. You have different approach, different technologies. So again, to align with new consumers' expectations, you need to deal with some other considerations like multifunctionality, like naturality. But in addition, you need also, again, because we are moving away from traditional preservation systems to new technologies as well. So what it means, again, we mentioned before the key considerations about hydrophilicity. So we need really to focus on hydrophilicity to the new solutions for the maximum efficacy. The other thing also is to find now synergistic action from different compounds. And that's what we observe now, which is the combination of different compounds to provide optimal efficacy while diminishing the quantity of preservatives that you can put on your skin, but also very important to find new mode of action to protect from the microbial contaminants.
Mhm, mhm. I think I said a moment ago how much I love learning, so I'm curious. There is a new product, I believe, in your portfolio, this Aquavita tech. Does that fit into what you're describing now? And if so, can you teach me more about that?
Completely. There are different considerations here that Sharon Aquavita addresses. First of all, it's a product that is completely hydrophilic. So again, it will focus on the water phase, so for maximum efficacy. The second thing is that it's a multifunctional. It's a vitamin-based and particularly niacinamide-based ingredient that has the multifunctionality to be, of course, high preservation efficacy combined with skin health and hair health benefits. But also, what's very interesting, and again, today, to be very effective in the preservation market, you need to be a science-based. You need to have a strong scientific understanding, not only about the cosmetic products, but about the biocontaminants. And that's what we have with Sharon Aquavita. Again, that has been demonstrated by two published papers, recently 2024 and 2025, where we demonstrated another mechanism of action where we protect from microbial contaminants. So instead of having a membrane disruptor, we have something that will interact with the bacterial DNA. So again, that has been demonstrated through different, of course, the traditional challenge test and different testing that you can approach. But this is a new way to look at preservation that will more align with today's consumers' expectations.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so interesting. There's a lot going on there. I want to ask a little follow-up question, and I think listeners know at this point I am not a scientist, but my understanding is that even the sort of traditional preservation systems, even if they're added during the oil phase, they are functionally active in water. I'm trying to get my head around this idea of sort of lipophilic and hydrophilic preservative systems, because we know hydrophilic, right? This is water loving. Lipophilic is sort of oil loving. And you're talking about something that is like fully hydrophilic now and going towards, being used in the water phase, being more effective since that's where the microbes are likely to propagate and cause problems. Is there something? I wonder if there's more for me to learn here. Is there something else you can share that would help me understand this new technology and really how it's different?
Well, again, all preservation systems to be on the market needs to show efficacy, okay? So, but in addition to that, you're talking about the percentage you put you need to put in your formula or the level of efficacy towards, for example, some specific applications. Like there are different products that are sometimes more difficult to preserve.
Yep.
So by having those panel of various solutions will allow you and will allow formulators to find always the right solution for their products, but also to address again the consumer expectations. So, but definitely, the more hydrophilic you are, the better efficacy you will be able to provide.
No, this makes sense. No, that's helpful to think about too. And like you said, really, it depends as much on the product formulation as as it does the efficacy. It's always a collaboration, really, or a system, right? We talk about preservative systems. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, today, the key is there's no more one size fits all. So you need to have in your portfolio a wide range of solutions where formulators can tap on so that they will find the exact solutions to what they are doing.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that makes good sense. And you mentioned a moment ago the idea of sort of what we would call multifunctional preservatives, something that acts as a preservative, but also imparts maybe skincare or hair care benefits. And I don't know your entire background, but I don't think either of us are regulatory specialists. So we're certainly not ready to offer legal advice. But I do wonder if having a multifunctional preservative, at least in some markets around the world, would that mean that the finished product could be called preservative free? Can we sort of focus on the hair care benefit and and just wash over the other? Or do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think, again, we have to be careful when you say multifunctional. Multifunctional definitely means preservation efficacy with skin benefits or hair benefits. So definitely you have a preservation efficacy here in the multifunctionality. I think it's very important, and I think it's very important because it's very important to, even though we hear some conversations about preservation free, I think it's very important to communicate to consumers that the cosmetic products are safe. And
Yeah.
thanks
I
to
appreciate that. It almost sounds like even if there were an opportunity to say preservative free, we shouldn't because it's very misleading.
absolutely. And again, we need to make sure that we are assuring the consumers that what they're using is safe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like this answer. And Pascal, before we finish up our conversation, I want to move from the preservation of products to perhaps I can say the preservation of business. Over the years here that I've spent in the industry, I have seen many ingredient companies enter the US market, the greater Americas region. Some of these companies will start with local offices, they'll build an in country team, then they'll find distribution partners to cover various regions, right, in or beyond the States. Other companies sort of first partner with an established distributor and later on bring the business in-house, right, and develop a team in the US. I'm wondering if you can tell us anything about Sharon's approach to business development in the Americas and really how you, as general manager for the region, are shaping the business for long-term success in these markets.
Well, of course, it's a very good question because we have that question every day. How we can, address customers in the best way. So definitely for us at Sharon, you mentioned before, we had a very strong expertise historically, 45 years of expertise in preservation, but also for the last 3-4 years, we have expanded into other categories such as functionals and active ingredients. Why? Because then we can propose the complete solutions to our customers. Also then today, because also under the pressure of consumers, it's more about it needs to be science-based. So you need to have a strong foundations, and you need to be able to substantiate all your claims. You need to be able to again provide, as for preservation systems, the total safety to the consumers. So this is what we want to develop, but also again to provide a service. Because it's not only to put the products on the market, but you need also to be able to service directly your customers so that they will feel comfortable about the solutions you provide. So this is our commitment to deliver quality products, but also very expert services.
That makes sense. It's very helpful to know. Pascal, everything you have shared with us today has been quite interesting. Thank you for being my guest today on the CosmoFactory podcast.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the CosmoFactory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the CosmoFactory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the CosmoFactory podcast.